Welcome back to our reading of Infinite Dendrogram. Not waste any time today, and let's just get right into it. Chapter 5 Superior. Clan leader of Mad Castle. Full armor giant, Barbary, Bad Burn. In Dendro, there are two ways for players to fight amongst themselves. The first was dueling. Players would gather in an arena, agree on a set of conditions and rules, decide what items the victor would get, and begin fighting. Since no one would die, even if their HP hit 0, all of the damage done would be reverted the moment the battle ended. Duels were much like a casual pastime. The other means was player killing. Players would attack other players outside of an arena and give them the death penalty. Players who died this way would drop money and items at random, just like monsters. One of the differences between losing a duel and dying from another player was that the former allowed you to choose what items you lost, while the latter randomized it. The other difference was in whether the defeated side died or not. That was the reason why there were those who specialized in dueling, and those like us, who specialize in player killing. I, the leader of the clan Mad Castle, Barbary, Bad Burn, love player killing. In fact, my clan and I are enjoying some wholesome player killing right at this very moment. Wah, wah. A newbie player who looked like, and probably was, an elementary schooler, was crying as he attacked me with his starting gear. However, no matter how many times he tried, the damage he always did was 0. Come on. Damage me for at least 1 HP and I'll let you go. Not that could ever happen, mind you. Mine was a higher rank job focused on endurance. Full armor giant. Not only that, but I had damage decrease, which decreased all incoming damage by 20%. And damage reduction, which took away 500 damage from all attacks, so a newbie like him couldn't damage me even if he landed a critical hit. Oh, still crying, the newbie attacked me while making an attempt to run away. However, I quickly stood in his path before he could complete his escape. Despite having a heavy non-agile job, I was still much faster than a newbie, not to mention that I had my embryo's ability. I also made sure to prevent him from logging out. To log out of this game, a player needed about 30 seconds of free time. No one could do it unless they were able to spend those 30 seconds without being touched or attacked by someone else. It was a fact of the game that was meant to prevent crime, but it could easily be used for crime. Well, player killing wasn't actually forbidden, so it wasn't really a crime in any sense of the word. Also, for one reason or another, likely as a means against harassment, players were able to commit suicide. Even if players were rendered unable to move even a single finger, they could give themselves the death penalty at will. However, by doing that, players dropped way more money and items than when killed by a player killer, so there weren't many who used that function. Alright, time's up. The newbie gasped. As he continued his fruitless struggle, I held my large shield in both hands and swung it down on him. My shield, which was 1 meter in diameter, became a giant stamp and left a mark on the ground. The ink was the player. Of course, since he died, what was left of the newbie quickly disappeared. A good thing I set my visuals to CG. The sight would have been pretty damn grotesque if I had set it to realistic. There's something seriously wrong with those who pick realistic visuals. Battles with undead monsters get really grim from that perspective. You sure are a scumbag, boss. You even made me feel bad for the kid, I laughed one of my clan members. Holy shit, I sure won't be eating any tomatoes today. What do you say to cheeseburgers for dinner then? As you can see, I can get the mincemeat as if it's no big deal. I think I'll pass. Lol. Clan members working with me began their usual banter and I joined in, making sure to sound as scummy as possible. Yeah, role-playing as a bad guy sure is fun. It probably has something to do with being able to show off a side of you that you can't really show anywhere else. For example, in reality, Van Blue, you're the one grinning at my side, was a public service worker with a husband and kid. Oh, is this a woman? Was a public service worker with a husband and kids, but that couldn't have mattered less here. Mad Castle's motto was thus: forget reality, get hyped up and kill some players. It wasn't the least bit enjoyable to the ones getting killed, mind you. However, in this game, where everyone was competing for more power, it was the weakling's own fault for being weak. Yeah, I've heard of people who got so traumatized by player killers that they stopped playing. Well, like I care. Seriously, I couldn't have cared less if I tried. Killing and getting killed were both part of the game. And so boss, including this brat, how many have we killed by now? Yeah, well, I stopped counting the ones I'd killed when I hit 50. And my Mad Castle clan was occupying the Southern Mountain Pass south of the capital, and had been killing any players who happened to pass by. We'd only went for those we were able to handle, but so far everyone had been weak enough for me to do it solo. There had been a group that had come here to stop us, but me and my clan had no problem taking care of them too. Hey, but man, this is a good deal we've got. All we do is kill some players and the money comes out flowing in like a man. Like a fan. Oh yeah, it's great. Deal. Well, that's the word for it. We were player killing here because we had a deal going on. For every death penalty we gave, we received a flat 10,000 lire reward. Now this deal would last for a whole month, game time. We couldn't ask for better conditions. And that was without mentioning that of being a newbie hunting ground. This place was full of scrubs we could crush like insects. The first day we started had been so damn good that it gotten us more than 1,000,000 lire. It had been hilarious. What was just as funny was the fact that it had become big news. Unlike the clan in the north, we didn't hide our identities. That led people to find out who we were, but to us villain role players, that was only a blessing. But man, we sure don't get as many players now as we did at the start. Guess they're all scared shitless now. Oh yeah, last night at the tavern, I heard that the guys in the east don't have much to do either. But the other 3 hunting grounds surrounding the capital were occupied by other player killers. Just like our clan, the ones in the east and the west were full of delinquents who didn't give a damn about what people thought and just wanted to kill some players. Yeah, though I've heard that Goblin Street, the guys in the west, are getting some serious extra cash. Yeah, well, that's because they go after NPCs too. Ain't that just scary? Well, maybe. Player killing wasn't a crime. Dendro's law ignored all conflicts between masters. However, killing NPCs was a serious offense. Ending an NPC's life without a valid reason, such as self-defense, them being criminals, or taking part in a war event, would cause them to recognize the offending player as a criminal. Put them on a wanted list. Getting on a country's wanted list made the player unable to use the country's save points. If that had been all there was to it, simply switching to another country's save points would solve the problem. But overdoing it with the killing would then get the player on the wanted list of every country. When on all of the 7 lists, the player would simply be done. They wouldn't be able to use any country's save points. Considering that getting the death penalty in such a situation would send you to that place, the risks were way too high. The guys at Goblin Street probably had save points at Caldina or something. We had no intention of going through those lengths just so we could kill NPCs. In fact, killing NPCs didn't make me feel good. Once I'd killed a criminal NPC and it made me feel like crap. As if I'd broken an expensive vase. That was why we chose not to touch any NPCs trying to pass through this hunting ground. Well, we're too scared to try, anyway. Yeah, I'll stick to player killing. It's both comfortable and fun. True? Something's seriously wrong with the guys in the West. Even if we're all player killers, I don't want to get involved with that lot. You know, I simply listen to them, and all honestly, I'm more afraid of the one in the North than the ones in the West. Person in Nos Forest was bad news. Unlike in the other places, it wasn't a clan there, but a single player killer. I didn't know his name, all I knew about him was that he was a trickster, good at hiding himself. And that what he was doing was his day job. Well, there was no better term for it, day job. He had been playing as hitman for as long as he'd been known in Dendrogram. Players who were killed by other players or received some sort of harassment would sometimes grow vengeful and develop grudges. Killing players based on the request of such people was part of his daily life. I'd even heard that he'd once gotten a quest to assassinate a superior that was on wanted list. Superiors were players that had made their embryos evolved into their 7th forms, the elite of the elite. No one in the right mind would even think of fighting someone like that. I, of course, was no exception. However, though he'd received serious amounts of damage, the player had been able to give the superior a death penalty and send him to that place. Due to that, he'd gotten the title of Superior Killer. Though we were business partners right now, I really didn't want to meet him. I don't think I'd lose to him, but hitmen like him, cohesive as they were, just seemed far worse than both player and NPC killers. Not getting involved with them was the right idea. Hey boss, we've got another one, yeah? He was contacting me by using an item that allowed communication between members of the same clan. We had 6 parties consisting of 6 people each. Each member of every party had split up and formed groups of 6 with members of other parties before positioning themselves in different places across the area. With this setup, if one group got destroyed in some sort of surprise attack, the actual party members would be able to tell that something was wrong by looking at their party status. It was a large-scale battle tactic that we were all accustomed to using. Whoa, damn, yeah, this sucker has some good-looking gear on him. Well then, if he's not a newbie, he's here to hunt us down, huh? It seems like, yeah, he's alone, though. Alone? Well then there's no problem. Just attack, threaten him to take off his gear, and kill him. It sounds good, boss. Today, we'll sell that gear and have a wild party member Jordan A has died. Resurrection period expired. Due to the death penalty, Jordan A was logged out. Huh? That was all I could think. Oi! Stop with the jokes. Shits like this freaks me out when it's so Party member Lord Beltmars has died. Resurrection period expired. Due to the death penalty, Lord Beltmars was logged out. Another party member that I'd been in contact with had died. The resurrection period was the time in which resurrection items and magic could have an effect. If someone successfully resurrected the player before the period ended, the player would avoid the death penalty. However, the time given was dependent on the state of the corpse. The 2 deaths had been instant and had left basically no resurrection period. I could only assume that they had been turned into mincemeat in but a single moment. Upon looking at the clan members at my side, I noticed that they all had turned pale. But once I asked what was up, they said their party members who had been in the same place as Jordan A and Lord Beltmars was also dead. Basically, the 12 clan members positioned at those 2 places had all met in nearly simultaneous and swift death. Did they all get ganked by a group of players? There's no way. Yeah, after all, each place had had a person with a great enemy detect skill. It should have been impossible for a group of players to prepare such an attack without getting noticed. But if the one who did it was already spotted, and if it's really just one, then... It's a player! A player from Altair! Yeah, one of my party members from another position contacted me. I saw a chain! It took Marlo and... Party member Mando has died. Resurrection period expired due to the death penalty. Mando logged out. The screams coming from the other side before were getting cut out were a sign that the third group had been eliminated. However, before dying, the party member had left me with some valuable information. He mentioned that the player used a chain. There was little doubt that it was the same well-equipped sucker they'd seen before dying. Well, now this sucker is massacring our members as if it's nothing. This one clearly isn't your average Joe. The Kingdom of Voltaire happened to have a famous player who used chains. His name was... It's Figaro! Why is the Over-Gladiator here? Party member Mohawk X has died. Resurrection period expired. Due to the death penalty, Mohawk X was logged out. Over-Gladiator Figaro. The Endless Chain. One of Voltaire's big three. The king of hanging around the city of duels, etc. He had many names, and was one of the strongest players in not just the Kingdom of Voltaire, but in the whole game itself. He was a superior, and there were even rumors that that weirdo raided created dungeons solo. That lunatic was now with us, on this mountain, and he clearly had it in for us. It was an unexpected scenario. Since we were committing acts of terror against Kingdom players, it was only natural for the ones at the top of the Kingdom rankings to come take care of us. However, the rumors had suggested that Figaro wasn't the time to get involved in such events. I heard he spent most of his playing time either raiding the dungeon or dueling in the Colosseum. Why, after all, he hadn't even participated in the war, and yet party member Goro Mushoku has died. Resurrection period expired due to the death penalty. Goro Mushoku was logged out. Suddenly, I heard some rattling. A frustrated grunt escaped my mouth. Right after I got the message that members in the 5th position were eliminated, meaning that we were the last, my killing intent perception skill went off and warned me about the attack coming this way. I didn't know the direction it was coming from. Still, I only needed to know it was coming to be able to do something about it. A moment later, I saw a chain with a pyramid-like tip flying right at me. Astro Guard! I activated a full armor giant defensive skill. It rendered me unable to move in exchange for multiplying my defense by 5. With this, my total defense was now over 15,000, the greatest I could reach. The chain hit my shield with a dreadful amount of power behind it. Whoa! My HP had gone down. My defense was over 15,000. I had a skill that decreased all damage by 20% and another one that took away another 500. And yet he'd been able to break through all these walls and deal damage to me. It was only natural that the guys positioned at the other places had gotten slaughtered without even getting time to heal. Thus, chains that I deflected went towards and pulverized Banblue. Oh, I forgot, Banblue's a woman. She wasn't the only one though. Besides me, everyone positioned here was attacked by the chains and scattered into 1,000 pieces. Oh man, I can't move, so I couldn't protect you. With that, the survivors around me disappeared and I could no longer contact anyone. Looks like they're all dead and dealing with the death penalty now. Still immobile, I kept up my Astro Guard stance. Besides the chains, which were making metallic sounds as they hit and slightly damaged me, the only other thing moving was the Over-Gladiator, Figaro. I saw him walking up the mountain road when I tried to trace where the chains were coming from. He had a well-proportioned face, so if, unlike me, he hadn't spent a significant amount of time on his character creation and had just gone with the defaults, it was fair to assume that he was handsome in real life as well. His apparel was strange, but by using identification, a skill that allows me to see item names and values, I discovered that everything he was wearing was highly powerful and extremely rare. In fact, some of them were so rare that my identification level wasn't high enough to identify them. The bastards even wearing some UBM special rewards as if it's no big deal. Special rewards for MVPs in UBM battles, unique boss monsters, were bound to the MVP and thus couldn't be transferred or dropped. So despite being damn strong, they were worthless to us. Though Figaro's face and apparel were deserving of a comment or two, there was something about him that just couldn't be ignored. It was the red chains, several of them, wrapped around both of his arms. This game had a limit to how many weapons you could wield. The standard amount was either one for both hands, or one in one hand and another in the other, like me and my shield. Besides that, normal players could use throwing weapons or items like gems, but that was the extent of the weapons they could utilize. However, this Figaro guy was wielding 6 chains, 3 on each arm. And yes, I was completely certain that there were 6 chains, not just 2 that seemed separate. But they all had the same name, the Crimson Dead Keeper. They weren't connected in any way. Though Figaro didn't seem to be moving them, all the chains automatically extended and went straight towards me. Most would think this is a joke, but they'd be wrong. According to the identification results, Crimson Dead Keepers had the skills Auto Enemy Detect and Range Extend. You'd be hard pressed to find a more user-friendly weapon. From the fact that identification worked on them, it was obvious that they weren't as an embryo, which made it all the more obvious that he was actually wielding a total of 6 weapons. It was way over the standard wield limit, but I had been aware that the Gladiator job grouping had a skill that allowed the players to wield more weapons. The ultimate maximum was supposed to be a mere 3, but since Over Gladiator was a superior job of that grouping, yeah, it wouldn't have been strange for it to have been a stronger version of that skill. Basically, it meant that he eliminated all of my clan without using his embryo and by relying only on his Over Gladiator skills and weapons in hand. I'm sure getting blocked a lot today. Figaro's first words didn't make even a bit of sense to me. You have some good defense, but I guess it's normal for a full armor giant. Still, it's rare for anyone to be this tough. Is your embryo focused on defense or something? I stayed silent. He wasn't stating his impressions, but he was stating his impressions, but I had no reason to respond in any capacity. Yeah, I could try bluffing, but if he had that truth discernment, a skill that informed the users if another person was lying, he'd see right through me and I'd only end up giving him info. Such is the fact that my embryo's power wasn't defensive at all. It looks like I've taken care of every other player killer besides you. Either by simply feeling it or by seeing that his chains auto-enemy detect weren't picking up anyone but me, he concluded that I was the last. And with those words, it became obvious that he'd come here to kill us. The player killers near the capital. So, can I assume that you're this PK's group's leader? And what if I said yes? And my only goal here is to secure the means of travel between the dual city and the capital. If you promised to leave this mountain pass, I'll gladly let you go. Is that something you say after killing every single one of my clan members? If I hadn't done that, you wouldn't even be willing to negotiate. Well, he's not wrong. Until he had eliminated us, we'd all considered him to be just another sucker for easy pickings. So we would have attacked him even if he had something to say. After all, we had no idea that there was such a gap in power between us and a superior. However, that made me consider something. Well, just how much stronger is he compared to me? A master with an embryo in its 6th form. If I could land a perfect hit with my embryo's ultimate skill, I might be able to kill him. Sure, with him having a superior job, his level is probably far greater than mine. My level is 500. Maximum I can reach with low rank and high rank jobs. That's the maximum I can reach with low rank and high rank jumps, and his can easily be 2 times higher than that. However, the results of PvP battles aren't decided by levels or stats. What matters is how well you can prevent your opponents from using their powers effectively while attacking them with your own. The superior killer got his name for a reason. It shouldn't be impossible for me to do it too. Alright. I'll leave this place as soon as I can. We, Mad Castle, won't be hunting any more newbies here. That wasn't a lie. With players of this caliber now coming after us, our little PK faced in this area was all but done. Well, back away. Right after I kill him anyway. Now I have a contract here when I use it. Reached into my item pouch and took out a piece of parchment. It was a contract, a type of item used in agreements between players. Anyone who went against the conditions would receive either a temporary loss of stats, some debuffs, or even the death penalty. Well, I don't see why not. Let's do it. Okay, I'm done filling it in. Let's take a look at it. Saying that, I began to bring the contract to Figaro. 5 meters. 4 meters. 3 meters. 2 meters. He was now in range. He was gonna take out his fucking stand? Magic circle appeared below my feet and spread around me. It was my embryo, Atlas.
Heavens, wait!
One of my Atlas's skills was the increase of weight. I was able to apply continuous damage to everything in the effective range by increasing the gravity of its surroundings. The effect was stronger based on distance, reaching its peak at 2 meters, where the gravity was 500 times greater than usual. At the same time, it applied the binding debuff, rendering Fyodor unable to move even a single finger. The chains automatically tried to attack me, but the overwhelming gravity forced them to the ground, where they could only crawl. So far, no one has ever been able to break out of this combo between binding and super gravity. A standard high-ranking player would have already been crushed to death, but I wasn't naive enough to assume, or to believe that the superior before me would die as easily. It was time to use Atlas's ultimate attack.
Astro Guard!
I used Astro Guard again to multiply my defense by 5.
Emancipated Giant Atlas!
Followed by the skill named after Atlas itself. It converted my defense to offense and multiplied my attack power by 10 for 10 seconds. My attack power was now over 150,000. Clean hit from that should have been enough to insta-kill anyone, even a superior. As Figaro was still unable to move, I began barraging him with Atlas's strongest attack.
Break and die!
The ground below me shattered, caved in, and became a large crater, but I didn't give a damn. For all I knew, he could have had multiple resurrection or related accessories. I had to spend each and every one of these 10 seconds attacking him. Suddenly a sound. As I continued my barrage, a chain wrapped around my neck. It shocked the words out of me. I looked down. What I saw was the ground I'd shattered with my barrage, but Figaro was nowhere to be seen. If he wasn't before me, there was only one place he could be at. By that I meant at the other end of the chain tightening around my neck. It was going upwards, so I looked up and saw Figaro hanging about 10 meters up in the air.
How?
He'd been affected by 500 times the normal gravity and had the binding debuff. There was no way he could have jumped that high. Suddenly realization. I had heard many things about Figaro. Among them was that, for the Over Gladiator, raiding a created dungeon solo was part of his daily life. The very idea of solo raiding was stupid, but any lunatics who attempted it had to make sure they met a certain condition. It wasn't the high stats, nor was it a means of healing. It was all about countermeasures to debuffs, paralysis, sleep, petrification, and of course, instant death. When going solo, players didn't have any allies that could help them with such debuffs. So getting one of them would be the equivalent to dying. Thus, anyone raiding solo would have to have a means of dealing with debuffs. Therefore, it was only obvious that this solo-focused superior would have been prepared for that. He had some equipment I couldn't identify. One of them probably nullified all binding effects. No. There's no way! I had been about to accept that conclusion, but I simply couldn't. The binding from my Heaven's Weight was a personal skill from a high-rank embryo. There was no way it could have been nullified so easily. Suddenly, another realization. I thought that he wasn't using his embryo, but what if I'm wrong? What if his superior embryo is already active? What if that's the reason why he was able to nullify my binding and jump as high as he did if 500 times greater gravity doesn't matter? Another sound. I instantly looked up at Figaro. Due to the light behind him, I couldn't make out his expression. However, it gave me chills I couldn't describe. When he landed, I got a good look at his face, which made the chills turn even worse. Sound again. His narrow eyes were open wide and shining red. His mouth was in a smile, sharp, like a crescent moon, and open wide enough to see his throat. The sounds coming from his throat were downright inhuman. It was reminiscent of growls that your average monster would sound. Meaningless and thick with bloodlust. A short scream escaped my mouth. At that moment, he raised both of his chained hands up into the sky. That motion made the chains wrapped around my neck begin to pull upwards. My body, more than 2 meters worth of armored flesh, was separated from the surface and got distance from the earth. My ears were overwhelmed by the sound of air grazing my whole body. Likely by using his chain's range extend skill. He made them raise me up at incredible speeds and didn't even know where to stop. Figaro was now but a dot on the surface. A moment later I was higher than the mountain peak, reached the clouds and went beyond. Soon enough I no longer had any air around me. I made my lungs work at full capacity, yet nothing was coming in. The word suffocation had come to mind. Though Dendro allowed the players to reduce all pain to nothing but dull impacts and didn't do anything about the anguish of oxygen deprivation. However, there was no need for me to worry about suffocating because something far scarier happened. As if it was only obvious, the chains began to get pulled back down to the ground. Sights I'd seen on my way up now went by me at an even faster speed, making me feel as if someone had rewinded my life. Scream of despair escaped from my mouth. It didn't matter that I was in a game. All I was experiencing was thick with the fear of death. It didn't matter that there was no pain. The shape of fear living beings feel when faced with imminent death was unrelated to that. Game's realism conveyed the fear of death all too well. From sky high and at a ridiculously high speed, I was falling to my death. Still, with a monstrous smile on his face, Figaro was waiting for me on the surface. Once again, he made that sinister, incomprehensible sound. One of his chains was replaced by another weapon. A chainsaw-like greatsword. He swung it straight at me where I was. He strung it straight at where I was falling. A moment later, the twisted, crunching sound ripped from my own body, and I. Fatal damage. Body eliminated. Resurrection period expired. Death penalty. 24-hour log-in ban. Rangu Restaurant, Kingdom of Altar. Paladin Ray Starling. That was one brutal fight. Yeah, after watching the clip in Mary's crystal ball, I was seriously taken aback. It was paused at the frame with a huge armored guy. The PK leader was getting split in half. According to Mary, the armored guy was an infamous player who had high defense and a counterattack-like ultimate skill that dealt serious damage. Due to that description, I found him somewhat relatable and began to feel that his demise, that mangled corpse, was a glimpse of my future if I ever fought Figuro. And that's how everyone in Mad Castle met with a sad end. Yeah, even if they recover from this, they'll never return to player killing in that area. Yeah, makes sense considering that stopping the traffic there would make Figuro get involved again. Yeah, if I ever find myself in the Dual City, I'll have to remember to thank Figuro for this. Indeed. If for some reason she seemed a bit sulky, instead of looking at the crystal ball, she was merely eating with Bebby, who didn't seem to care about any of this whatsoever. The amount Nemesis consumed was as great as always, but it almost seemed like she was stress eating. Why though? Okay, well let me show you the next one. Now, this time Mary's crystal displayed a familiar place. It was the first hunting ground I'd ever leveled up at, the Easter Plains. Sure enough, there was a group of player killers there. Though they were hiding from players and waiting for their next prey, they weren't hidden from the camera. A few moments later, another group, and quite a strange one at that, came from the direction of the capital. Yeah, I couldn't tell the exact number, but they were surely more than 100 of them, all marching towards the player killers. Each and every single one of the group had an outfit with a crescent moon and a closed eye on it. The design seemed familiar, but I couldn't recall where I'd seen it. In response to the group's sudden appearance, the player killers became visibly perplexed and continued hiding. Soon enough, a single lady walked out of the is it Liliana? A single lady walked out of the strange group. No. She had black hair that was reminiscent of nightly darkness, and reached as far as the back of her knees. They were hidden by her ceremonial kimono. Her beauty made me feel as though I was looking at Princess Kaguya, straight out of the children's tale. Yet suddenly the beauty raised her hand, making the world go through what seemed like a theatrical blackout. Mere moments ago it had been daytime and the sun had been shining, but she had somehow brought forth a night. It was complete with a blue moon that was downright impossible in reality and perhaps even the game. A moment later, the player killers, who were bathed in the blue moonlight, grabbed hold of their throats and began to writhe in pain, which rendered them unable to properly move. As if they had been waiting for this, the strange group split up and began systematically killing the writhing player killers. With their victims unable to move in any capacity, it seemed less like a battle and more like a tedious job. However, there was an exception. A certain player killer, a beastman-type female player with wolf-like ears and tail, could still move even when exposed to the moonlight. According to Mary, that was one of KNR's two leaders. Using her claws and fangs, she savagely clawed her way through the enemies surrounding her and closed in on Princess Kaguya. However, it was all in vain. The hundreds surrounding her were too much for her to handle, so she ended up dying at the edge of a spear. The sight made the beauty reminiscent of Princess Kaguya cackle in a discomforting manner. That's Toyokoya Fuso of the Lunar World. She is one of the owners of the clan known as the Lunar Society, though I guess the term founder or spiritual leader is more appropriate. Spiritual leader? I raised an eyebrow. It was a strange title, but it reminded me that her job was High Priestess. Nevertheless, I found it to be somewhat questionable. Is this Lunar Society related to the Japanese cult of the same name? Oh. His words reminded me of where I'd heard that before. The Lunar Society was the name of a cult that existed in reality. Yes, the clan, the Lunar Society, is part, or rather, the headquarters of the cult of the same name. Uh, why are they advancing their religion in a game, of all places? The Lunar Society's first teaching is escape the shackles of flesh and betake yourself to the true world of souls. I guess they consider Dendro to be that world. I was fully aware of this world's realism. Our five senses and the TNs we interact with can't be distinguished from the real thing, but is that really enough reason to take it that far? If their goal is to betake themselves to the true world of souls, and they accomplished it by getting here, what are they doing now? Oh yes, their second teaching is the main one. It goes like something like, embrace this free world and celebrate your liberty to your soul's consent. It sounds like the dogma of some dark god. The Lunar Society is quite feared among the players. Not only are they more than 1,000 strong, but they also have roots in reality. So many players are afraid that getting on the cult's bad side might get something done to them in real life. Well, that's a scary thought. If there's the possibility of them abducting me or something, I'd rather not get involved with them either. By the way, as far as we know, the reason for going after the player killers was the fact that one of their players was killed by them. It's scary that such a thing could get the entire clan to go after you, isn't it? Would I be wrong to assume that right next to the war, the cult is another reason why people are leaving the kingdom? Next, Amari displayed what had happened in the west. What I first saw was Lele, the girl that had participated in the party we had on my first day. Lele? Oh, the one that got him drunk, okay. Just like that time, she was wearing a Chinese dress despite having a Northern European face. From what my brother had told me, she was from there in real life too. What, she's from Northern Europe? Lele's fighting style, as I saw it in the crystal ball, was simple. She didn't bring them up to the sky just to have them fall on a chainsaw, nor did she make them writhe just to have a group come up and impale them. She simply walked up to the hiding player killers and punched them. That was all. However, the results were downright ridiculous. Figaro's chains basically turned his opponents into mincemeat, but this was on another level. The player killers were completely liquefied. They were bursting so easily it almost made me think that they weren't people, but people-shaped water balloons. The moment Lele touched them, their flesh simply collapsed, leaving only a blood and entrail-colored liquid and the skin that was released. And the skin that released it. Speaking of skin, it was flying around everywhere, decorating just about every surrounding tree. Because they instantly died, it would quickly disappear, but the sight itself wouldn't leave my mind as easily. I think I can see why she's called the protocol of feasts. No proper feast is complete without meat and drink, and she provided both. What a grim thought, though. Despite seeming like a really jovial character in the party, Lele had a seriously scary fighting style. Mary didn't know why Lele had decided to eliminate the player killers. With what happened in the south, east, and west now being clear, all that was left was the north. North's forest. It was the place I was the most curious about. After all, I had died there once. Now, about the north, Mary seemed somewhat reluctant. Just what is she about to show us? Well, I'll just play it then. Mary controlled the crystal ball and made it show the forest. It had been filming during daytime, when I had still been raiding the tomb labyrinth. Apparently, this was the earliest of the 4 eliminations. However, I couldn't see the player killer anywhere. Sure, the trees in the night's darkness made it hard to see, but there was absolutely no sign of him. As I continued intently looking at the crystal ball and searching for him, the screen suddenly turned red as the footage ended. It quickly changed to a recording from another camera, but just like the last one, it quickly got cut off as well. The next recording wasn't a clip from the inside of the forest, but an overhead view of the whole area. The camera was probably placed on the capital's outdoor wall. Anyway, it showed with great clarity what was happening in the forest. The forest was being bombarded by artillery shells and set aflame by a rain of incendiary bombs. Not showing a single person, the clip ended with just that, a flaming forest, making it feel like a scene out of cuts from some war movie. It's from Apocalypse Now. What is this? Rook's question made Mary smile awkwardly. This is, the battle between King of Destruction, the Unknown, and the unidentified player killer widely known as the Superior Killer. The tone of her explanation made it seem like she had no confidence about what she was saying. I can see why. The clip shows neither the player killer nor the King of Destruction eliminating him. It's nothing but a display of environmental destruction. If it doesn't show the King of Destruction, how can you be so sure that he was the one who did it? Hell, we don't even see the player killer, so it might not even be the superior killer either. That's a good point. From what we know about him, it's all but confirmed that the PK is the superior killer. But we don't have any conclusive proof about the one who attacked him being the King of Destruction. This is only an assumption based on the extent of the destruction displayed here, but you see, the King of Destruction has always been an enigmatic figure that doesn't let anyone know much about him. Oh yeah. His reason for not participating in the war is that he didn't want to stand out. Though that's not very convincing when coming from someone who just turned an entire forest to cinders. Oh, but there are rumors that the King's embryo is a battleship. Take a closer look here. Mary pointed a finger at a certain spot on the crystal ball. Behind the burning forest, shrouded by the darkness of night, there was a large black silhouette. Its outline was too acute to be the ridgeline of a mountain, and indeed many would assume it to be a battleship. So battleship embryos exist, huh? Not particularly surprised. You know, my brother's was a tank, so it wasn't outside the realm of expectation. You know, in fact, I had been more startled by Tsukuyo Fuso's embryo. I had a feeling that it was the knight itself. Yeah, but wait. Wouldn't such a large-scale attack harm more than just a superior killer? And what if it actually killed some Tians? I don't think we have to worry about that. With all the player killing, almost no one dared to go through there. In fact, I think the King of Destruction only took such a flashy approach because he was certain no one else would get caught up in it. I see. Or maybe he turned the whole forest to ash simply because he couldn't find anyone. From what I had read on the internet, no one besides me had even seen the superior killer. Now that I think about it, how did the DIA get a hold of the information that led them to believe the player killer was the superior killer? Do you know the reason why the King of Destruction attacked the superior killer? Oh, we have no clue whatsoever. Despite being a player that gets strongly involved in many events across all countries, his identity and most of the reasons for his involvements are completely unknown. And that's why he's called the Unknown, right? Yes. We are completely clueless as to what drove him to cause such large-scale destruction. I wonder if something pissed him off. Wait, aren't there too many holes in the information about the North? Isn't this intel a bit too vague? I couldn't help but agree with Rook. The price had been 600 lire per area, but the information for Nosforest seemed worth a lot less. Oh? Now that you mention it. Oh, but wait. There's some extra info that comes with this. Extra info? Indeed, it's this. The superior killer left these flames alive. In response to Mary's words. Oh? Nemesis, who had up until that point been eating with Babby while barely looking at the crystal ball, finally showed some interest. I could somewhat understand why this was her only piece of info that had gotten a reaction out of her. Yeah, in fact, I'd finally realized why Nemesis was behaving the way she was. She was frustrated that the player killer had been all eliminated. She didn't like having the one she promised to get revenge on being taken away by someone else. I could relate to that as well, however. That's great news. He was still alive. Chapter 6. The Cat's Tea Party. Knowles Forest, Paladin Ray Starling. After Rook and I bought Mary's info and made a plan to meet up later, Nemesis and I went to the place that used to be Knowles Forest. This is just... Beyond the northern gate, there was a great wasteland as far as the eye could see. The forest had simply disappeared, leaving only felled trees reduced to nothing but charcoal. Knowles Forest could no longer be used as a hunting ground, nor was it deserving of the name forest. In a city building sim, the wasteland before me would have been a great place for building. Sadly, Infinite Dendrogram was an RPG. But man, it's hard to believe that a single player can change the map this much. I saw bullet holes, explosion marks, and could even smell the lingering stench of gunpowder. I had no clue if the King's Emperor really was a battleship, but there was little doubt that, just like my brother's Balder, it was either heavy weaponry or something greater in the same vein. He's from Japan. How does he know what gunpowder smell like? Another thing I noted was that, while the other three had targeted the player's killer directly, the King of Destruction had, well, destroyed the map. Sure, he lived up to his name, but it didn't make it less of a bother. It seemed as ludicrous as removing a whole arm in response to a diseased finger. This is gonna have some bad after effects, no doubt about it. People have already started leaving here at an even faster rate. We were talking about the local teens. Yesterday's bombing had put the entire capital into a state of panic. Thinking that Drife's army was launching a surprise attack, the Knights had moved out through the northern gate. By that point, however, the bombing had already been over, leaving nothing but a burning Knowles Forest. Though it didn't seem like the flames would spread to the capital, they could have just left them burning as they were. So the Knights had spent the entire night putting them out, and were still taking care of the aftermath. They were still taking care of the aftermath. All of this had been told to me by Liliana. We'd met by accident a short while ago, and she had palpable bags under her eyes. She'd even said, "If you become a paladin, then come and help us out." In a slightly whiny manner. Yeah, I know we were underground when the bombing happened and all, but I'm so surprised we didn't notice it. I had other things to worry about back then. You, on the other hand, were simply tired and had your senses dulled by fatigue. Yeah, anyway, the event that had reduced Knowles Forest, a place that the capital's citizens took for granted, to ashes had been enough to make the already tense populace go into panic mode. Since morning, the amount of people leaving the capital had been increasing by the hour. Another reason for the increase was the fact that the 4 PK groups were taken care of. Though the player killers had been primarily targeting masters, teens were also in danger of getting attacked if they were unlucky, which had made traffic around the capital grind to a complete halt. Today the roads were open again, making the people practically flood out of the city. Well, now that I think about it, teens can't differentiate between masters and other teens, right? Though we masters use embryos and are basically immortal. Both teens and masters share the basics of being human. Therefore, to teens, player killers are nothing but murderers. That goes double for the player killers who also go for teens. Man, taking care of this PK business sure came at a cost. One of the hunting grounds became unusable after all. Also, the horror experience back in the Tomb Labyrinth was all for naught. And despite all the money we spent on it, the advantage we'd gained had lasted for only a single night. Though, I did feel fortunate to have met Figaro. I've got to say though, the superior killer guy escaped from an attack that destroyed the entire forest. From what Mary had told me about the player killer in Null's Forest, the source of DIN's information about him had been Mary herself. Though a bit late, she had gone to gather material about yesterday's calamity right as it was happening. While doing so, she had happened to see the superior killer escape from the onslaught that was turning the forest to ash and run off into the distance. In her own words, he was using a skill with a concealment effect that hid his identity. But from the features of the embryo he was using, I couldn't be more sure that it was him. Once I had asked for those features, she said it was a handgun-shaped embryo that shot bullet-like animals. The description matched the one who had killed me. Apparently, the superior killer had been using those bullet-like animals to cancel all the attacks coming his way. By doing that, he'd been able to safely reach the capital. Despite all he had done already done up to that point, the King of Destruction couldn't attack the capital, and had given up on pursuing the superior killer. Jesus. When all of that was considered, he had been successful where I hadn't, in a battle with the sole goal of retreating from a stronger force. I was glad to not have the target of my revenge get taken away from me by the King of Destruction, but that notion made me slightly vexed. Let's go back then. We have plans with Rook after all. True. As we were about to make our way back to the capital, Nemesis focused on a single point of the landscape as if she had just noticed something. What's wrong? What do you make of that? Nemesis pointed at something, but I couldn't see anything there. And what do you see? There's a heat haze despite it not being hot. Wait, is that distorted space? Nemesis walked over to where she was pointing and simply disappeared. Huh? Nemesis! Called out, ran over to where she had vanished and passed through an invisible curtain. I described it as a curtain simply because even though there was some sort of resistance, it was extremely weak. Once I had walked through the invisible curtain... Huh? I was in a bright space that was neither dark nor bright. I was in a mysterious place that was neither bright nor dark, and didn't even seem to have the concept of up and down. The place was littered with countless blue, permeable windows that was already occupied by two familiar faces. One of them was Nemesis, who looked back at me as I confirmed that she was completely unharmed. Master, this place is... The other person, no, the word person didn't apply here. Oh, why are you here? The creature skillfully operating the windows was Cheshire, the control AI I'd met when I had begun playing Infinite Dendrogram. A few minutes had passed since we'd found ourselves in the mysterious space beyond the invisible curtain. Nemesis and I were sitting in chairs and drinking the tea Cheshire had prepared for us. As we had turned perplexed, Cheshire had said that, "I'll explain it all, but just standing around while I do that isn't fun, right?" And made the tea for us. At first, this space had been nothing besides the windows. Hadn't even been a floor. But Cheshire had reached into a pocket and taken out chairs and a table as if it was nothing. It reminded me of that cartoon about a cat robot I had been watching since I was a child. Though unlike that cat robot, Cheshire had a set of ears. So, what is the control AI doing here? Preliminary arrangement for environmental maintenance. The real work here will be done by Control AIs number 3 and 5, the ones responsible for the monsters and the environment. This space is basically an impromptu operating room. Oh, like a prefab using construction sites, huh? Though only we can see and enter these places. But the embryo girl here seems to be a maiden type, and I guess things like this can happen with them. She basically dragged you in here, didn't she, Ray? Well, what's so different about maidens? They're closer to us in some ways. They even keep the blank functionality? Huh? What did you just say now? Oh, sorry. That's information I can't verbalize. It's nothing big though, so don't mind it. Three letters? What could it be? The answer only left me with more questions, but the AI probably had some developer set duty of confidentiality it had to protect. We were already behind the scenes anyway. So I had other things I wanted to ask, so I decided not to push it. So, you're gonna fix this area? Infinite Dendrogram prioritized realism. That was the reason why places such as the Old Orchard could be invaded by bug monsters, but beginners' hunters' grounds such as the Lost Forest could be an exception. However, Cheshire shook his head. Oh, its head. No, we will not directly recreate the now lost Lost Forest. However, we can arrange some factors that would allow it to take the form of a similar environment. My job is to prepare for that. Cheshire stopped speaking for a moment and took a sip of the black tea before continuing. You're not that it matters, but you think a cat wouldn't be able to handle such a hot drink. This is a free world, after all. We, the Control AIs, would never undo the effects that creatures' autonomous actions have upon this world. Be they player, Tian, or monster. The results of freedom are none of our concern. However, there are some exceptions. After all, we have a Control AI meant for punishment. A punishment? If PK is perfectly fine, then what exactly is deserving of that? Getting on a country's wanted list, I guess? You know how this world has laws, right? However, when arrested players easily can escape jail by simply logging out or killing themselves, neither the police nor the knights have any means of preventing that. Well, that's why we have to control AI operating a jail for players, nicknamed the Gall. The AI also processes the player's inability to use save points when on a wanted list. Oh, that makes sense. If getting arrested or receiving the death penalty were the only demerits to committing crimes, someone just go about repeating them. That's part of the setting too. A master who has sinned and cannot return to a save point shall be transferred to the Gall. And all that. That's why you should register on save points in as many countries as you can. I have absolutely no intention of doing something that'd get me on wanted lists, though. That's good too. Well, even if you get on one, you won't be sent to the Gaol as long as you don't die. Now, this system sure is lenient on strong criminals. There are control AIs responsible for punishment. But what are you responsible for, Neko? I read that in the wrong voice. I'm the control AI handling chores. Chores? We AIs have things we're good and bad at. For example, I'm horrible at management functions, especially when it's related to environmental management. Well, that's not what you're doing right now. This is just a preliminary arrangement. A proper environmental simulation would include management of the cloud particle's entropy. I was silent. Just thinking about the scale of it gave me a headache. Though I guess being able to do that is part of being a proper control AI. Well, Cheshire said it's not capable of that though. My primary work is to be the tutorial guide. It's worth giving to control AIs with unallocated calculation resources. I welcome half of the players coming here. Wow, that sounds like an impressive amount. I'm doing the tutorial work right now, in fact. Like so. Upon saying that, Cheshire split into five differently padded cats spoke while handling the windows around them. Like so, but there's no reason to split in here. Even if there's 5 of me, it doesn't affect my work speed. After all, the calculation volume I use doesn't change at all. In fact, it slightly increases the calculation time and slows me down. And thus the 5 became 1 again. I was silent again. All this talk about calculations had made me remember that we were in a game server. This might have been the first time I had been presented with a display of cyber technology. I get to handle the chores because I'm good at processing the splitting I just showed. I see. So if you take half the newcomers, the other half is taken by other AIs, right? Yes. There's even an AI that doesn't allow you to redo your character appearance after you said it once. Yeah, I really think it should allow that. That might have been the control AI that my brother had been assigned to. After an approximately 20-minute long chat with Cheshire, we chose to take our leave. Not counting the welcoming, it's been so long since I met a person while being in this form. I'd love to present you with some sort of souvenir, but since I'm part of development, that would be favoritism. A big no-no. No need for that. The teas and sweets are more than enough, thanks. Indeed, they were delicious. But with how much she ate, a part of me feels like we're already in the no-no territory. Oh my. Having you said that makes me feel like making them was really worth it. Really worth it. Those cookies were handmade? That's unexpected. Oh, okay, hold on. Hold on now. How the hell can those cats hand make cookies? Hey, you should consider selling them on the market. I'll think about it. Oh, right, you're heading to Gideon soon, aren't you, Ray? I talked a bit about that during the tea party. Yeah, I am. Take care now. Cheshire's words seemed ominous. Is there something I should know? There is, but it seemed apprehensive about saying it. Is it something it can't reveal? I'll just keep it in a safe range then. The demon's heart lies in its stomach. That's all. Though it's not like you're guaranteed to meet it. Cheshire had given me a riddle, or a clue you'd find in a mystery novel. I couldn't tell. Well, I guess I'll record it in my memo window, I thought. And I did exactly that. I don't know if we'll ever meet again, but if we do, then until next time. Yeah, see ya. We passed through the exit the cat had created and we've turned to the previous map. Beyond it was the same wasteland we'd been in before. When I asked Nemesis about it, she said she could no longer see the entrance to Cheshire's workplace. I looked at the time and found out it was a bit past 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We had planned to meet Rook at 4, so we still had enough time. Nemesis and I made our way to the meeting spot, the facility known only as the Adventurers Guild. Infinite Dendrogram had 3 types of quests a player could accept. The first type was like the first quest I'd ever gotten. Random event quests. The second type was like the one Rook did for his job quests. The third type was a guild quest. In other words, the ones received at a facility known as the Adventurers Guild. Due to the word guild, some would confuse it with job guilds, but the quests were different in nature. The Adventurers Guild was a service that managed many of the varied quests, such as elimination, escorting, collection, or miscellaneous matters. Once registered, anyone could accept quests, regardless of their job or even if they were masters or teens. Of course, I was no exception. My level was decent, so I decided to continue progressing the game while making some coin from the quests there. Yeah, also, ever since we'd met, Rook and I had been talking about how cool it'd be to party up. So we decided to do that while taking on the same quest. And so, there are so many requests that I have no idea which one to choose. True. Inside the Adventurers Guild, Rook and I were letting our heads lie on a round table as we both eyed a thick book. And honestly, I was tired beyond words. The books we had were quest catalogs that displayed every request the guild had available. It was magically enchanted to add new requests and remove ones taken in real time, making the number of quests being displayed grow and drop without stop. Also, it didn't display quests from a difficulty level the players couldn't take. To us, it displayed all quests up to difficulty level 3, and apparently access to level 4 and higher was based on the amount of completed lower quests. Despite the lack of requests we couldn't see, the catalog was far too thick. It had approximately 1,000 pages. The catalog's thickness, too, had been caused by the King of Destruction and other superiors. Due to the King destroying Norse Forest, the amount of people wanting to escape the capital had increased, not to mention that the emancipation of the roads leading to other cities had revitalized the trading routes. As a result, there was a great spike in requests for escorts that could protect those travelers. The problem we were faced with, however, was that the rewards and difficulties for requests from those going to Gideon are so all over the place that I can't choose. True. There were dozens of escort quests where the destination was the city of Duels, the place where we could find Figaro. However, there were requests that had difficulty rewards despite having the same difficulty, or different rewards despite having the same difficulty, and vice versa. Since we couldn't accept any quest without thinking things through, the ones with favorable conditions often got picked by other people and disappeared from the catalog right away as we were considering them. Also, escort quests aren't even appealing. True. The ones who took the escort quests had to protect the requesters for the entire journey. However, Rook and I were players. We had to log out every now and then, and we couldn't do any protection when we weren't in the game. In the game setting, we masters got sent to another world every now and then, and the TNs were fully aware of that. Therefore, we players weren't suited for escort quests, so most of them were taken by TNs. Though there was some exception made for masters of a particularly high level. Maybe we should look for quests where we have to kill or deliver something. Though, the rewards would be smaller. True. Rook, that's all you've been saying for a while now. Oh, sorry. Reading this made me remember some things. From the fact that he looked like a middle schooler, I could only assume he was remembering a time he studied for his exams. Father's handmade textbook was even thicker than this. He mumbled as he went through the pages with an empty look in his eyes. If Rook's face was really the same as it was in reality, he was of Western descent. I guess the exam struggle is severe all around the world. College entrance exams I had to go through were so damn hard. Nemesis and Bobby were intently looking at books too. However, they weren't quest catalogs. Nemesis was examining the bounty list while Bobby was staring at the guild's food and drink menu. Master, it says here that those traveling on the road to Gideon sometimes encounter 2 boss monsters with bounties on them. King of the Wolf Pack, Lobota, and Great Miasmic Demon, Gordrander. I hope we meet them. Yeah, I'm not sure if I want to experience something so blatantly dangerous. Nah, Rook. Don't you think that a special pudding a la mode would be great with death sauce? Wanna order it? I don't think I want to experience something so blatantly dangerous. We shifted our attention away from their disturbed suggestions and focused on our quest catalog. First of all, it was already set in stone that we would accept the quest we could do on the way to Gideon. Rook wanted to go there because the city of Duels had a beast market. On the subject of Rook, though, in our little information exchange, I had found out that despite being twice the level I was, he had low stats. Though his MP and SP were higher than mine, I had double or more of every other stat. It was less about me being a paladin, a high-ranked job, and more about Rook's pimp being a low-stat job. A pimp's playstyle seemed to be focused on a gamble. You either charm or die. Charm or die. At this point, I had absolutely no doubts that it was Rook's vocation. If not pimp, the only possible thing he could have been was angel. Master, get a hold of yourself. You're always acting as though you're charmed. Okay. I said and I snapped out of it. Of course, Rook wasn't using his charm skill on me. He couldn't even if he wanted to, since it only worked on females. However, he was so handsome that he made the mind drift away every now and then. You know, even the other adventurers in the guild were throwing glances at our table. Hell, some were downright staring. Rook wasn't the only reason for that, though. Both Nemesis and Bobby were exceptionally beautiful, too. With 3 out of 5 of us being so attractive, I was only natural to become the center of attention. 5? 5? Man, it's been a while since I visited the Adventurers Guild. There's quite a large pile of guests today, huh? Mary, the journalist who sold us info about the PK incident, was sitting at our table. Okay, just how long have you been there? Could have sworn that we started with just me, Rook, Nemesis, and Bobby. Do you journalists have some skill that allow you to sit at tables without getting noticed? Oh, why are you here, Miss Mary? Well, I had business that involved going to Gideon, so I decided to pick up a quest I could go do on the way. And noticed you two talking about going to the Jewel City too. I figured I simply had to join. Well, may I come join you? Had to join, huh? Well, I don't really mind. What about you, Rook? Same here. In fact, having her join us would be reassuring. That's true. It was going to be the first time Rook and I ever traveled to another town. Mary, on the other hand, had been as far as Huanghe. So there was no doubt that she was used to making long journeys. That alone was enough to make her presence reassuring. Mary joined us in looking through the quest catalog. I found one that's named Elimination Request, Out of Phantom Sheep. The reward is high too. Oh, that one's no good. Though weak, Out of Phantom Sheep are extremely hard to find. It would take you 3 days of searching. Elimination Request, Blue Lemmings. This one also has a nice reward. We'd have to kill a whole 50 of them though. They're weak, mouse-like, easy to find monsters that come in flocks. It should be easy. No mice. Rook. No mice. Okay. About 10 minutes passed as we continued glaring at the catalog when suddenly... Oh, what would you say to this one? Mary pointed to a certain page. Difficulty level 2. Delivery request. The guild in Gideon, City of Duels. The reward is 30,000 Lear. Please complete a delivery from the capital's Adventurers Guild to the guild in Gideon. There is much to be delivered, so it is recommended that only those with a torch bag accept this request. You have 3 days to complete it. P.S. If you take the delivery and run, we will send an assassin after you. This request is from the guild itself. We only have to take the delivery to the other guild, so it's nothing really complicated. The reward is good too, so it's a really nice deal overall. Now, the PS part is a bit questionable, but I guess there's no need to worry if we play it fair. I'm up for this quest. What about you, Rook? Yes, it seems agreeable. Then it's decided. Already? I didn't get to eat my pudding yet. Everybody replied in... Oh, then it's decided... whatever. Everyone replied in their own way. Whatever the case, we had chosen the first quest we would do as a party. With that settled, you go on and accepted Ray? No, but you're the one that found it, so shouldn't you be the one to do it? When several people accept the same quest, the proper procedure is to create a party and have a representative go through the acceptance process. That involves a representative writing down his main job. Which means what? The guild receptionist wouldn't be too keen on giving the quest to a journalist or a pimp, right? She wasn't wrong. The request had come directly from the guild, so there was a chance they wouldn't give it to anyone who was questionable in terms of ability. However, that would never apply to paladins such as myself. But wait, my level is the lowest out of us 3, won't that be a problem? The first thing that comes up is your label, after all. Yeah, I also think that you should be the one to do this, Ray. First Mary, now Rook. They were both fine with it, so there was no reason for me not to do it. I took the catalog to the guild's receptionist and showed her the page at the request we'd decided upon. Understood. Please give us your card and fill in this form. I gave her my freshly made Adventurer's Guild member card and filled in all the fields I had to. We have processed your acceptance to this quest. Please go to that counter and retrieve the items. Doing as I was told, I went to take the delivery and placed it into my storage bag. With that, the preparations were done and we officially had a guild quest. A new step in our Dendro career. Difficulty level 2, delivery request. The guild in Gideon, City of Duels. Our destination was obvious, so we began the quest. The Kingdom of Altair in an unknown location. Cheering. Cheering as far as you could hear. It represented nothing but delight. Countless goblins were fiercely expressing their overwhelming joy. It was all because they had some creatures, though four-limbed, just like the goblins, they were different from them. For they were human. The goblins hungered. These past few days, no humans had passed through their territory. Thus the goblins, with their love for human flesh and the things they hauled, had become hungry beyond words. They survived by eating other monsters, but compared to the taste of humans and their food, those were simply unsatisfying. Thus the goblins were overjoyed. The human traffic through this area used to be stopped by something at the mountain, and they couldn't be more pleased that it was revived. For once again they had access to the food they loved. Strangely dressed human that had recently gone through their territory was too scary for them, so they could only have waited for him to pass. However, the human passing before them now weren't scary at all. Thus the humans themselves and the food they carried were nothing but a feast for them. Yeah. Letting out their war cries, the goblins began running towards the carriage before them.
Goblins! Why are there so many? Sir, this is too much for us to handle. Make the horses go as fast as they can. Alright. We have to run too.
The merchantman increased the carriage speed as the teen adventurers responsible for guarding him and his goods ran after it, trying not to fall behind. There were fleet of foot, so it was obvious that the goblins wouldn't catch up. Thus, the goblins roared. They roared out their cheer and delight. What are they doing? Are they trying to threaten us? Ignore them. Just keep on running away. The goblins weren't threatening them. They might have done that before an enemy, but when faced with food, such acts were meaningless. They were simply calling. Looks like we escaped. Huh? A moment later, the merchant, along with his carriage, was crushed by something that fell from the sky. As the something trampled on the corpse, now reduced to fruit-like mesh, it faced the nearby adventurers. What? Is this actually the UBM god? They weren't even given the time to say anything coherent. The something before them and the goblins that had quickly overwhelmed them all. Oh! And so, after a satiating feast and something, the something and the horde of goblins returned to their den. All of them were full of excitement for the next time they'd become hungry and have another feast past their territory. The area's name was Next Plains. It was south of Sodom Mountain Pass and north of Gideon, City of Duels. And anyone making their way to Gideon would simply have to pass through it.